So, if we're going to analyse our own writing, and hopefully you've already watched the first video that talks about how you put together a piece of long form writing, or indeed any piece of non-fiction writing, journalistic style, and the previous video also started to touch on the different frameworks from various scholars that you can use. So we're now going to look at how you would actually, how you would use those frameworks. So one of the things that Gerard Jeanette talked about, which was mentioned in the previous lecture, was point of view and focalization. So what point of view have you taken? So this is when you're looking at the piece that you've written. There will be a point of view. Is it a first person story? Is it a piece that you have written that's maybe autobiographical? So my story, I did this, I did that. Is it a third person? So, you know, is it from the point of view of she or he or them or it? You know, whose point of view is it that you've taken? And within that, so what point of view, in as much as which person it's written in, whether it's first person or third person. It's quite uncommon to have an article written in second person, not impossible though. But as well as that, there will still be another angle. Whose side are you on? So it could be that you're writing a first person piece about a particular issue, you know, maybe about a woman's right to choose, for example, and, you know, sort of birth control and abortion and so on. So it may be a first person piece written from your point of view, but you will still have a particular angle, a stance that you have. So whether you are for or against. So first person, yes, but also on top of that, a particular point of view. So the thing that you need to keep on thinking about when you're analysing a piece, and also when you're putting together the piece, what is your aim? You know, why are you writing this? What is it you want to say? What's the idea that you want to get across? And a lot of these elements about the point of view, the person that it's written in, will actually follow on from your aim. How long is the piece? So again, this is something that Gerard Jeanette looked at, this notion of temporality. And time works in different ways when we're looking at a piece of writing. So the basic, how long is the piece? How long does it take us to read it? Is it a short piece that will take us 3 minutes or 4 minutes? Or is it a long piece that will take us maybe 10, 15, half an hour long? You know, think about how long it takes for the reader to read it, and think as well about who that audience is, because if you're aiming at people who are looking for something quick and easy to read, then maybe that doesn't work for a piece that you're planning. You know, maybe because you're writing something that will be long form, that will take maybe, you know, 20 minutes to read, then who's the audience going to be? How can you ensure that that audience will stick with you for 20 minutes? How are you putting together that piece? So, you know, that notion of whether it's a short or a long read, that will give you an idea. But also, how long does the story itself, how long within the story, the piece, what time frame is being covered? Is the piece about one day, 1 minute, maybe a minute in somebody's life that changes everything? But, you know, or is the piece about something that happens over a week? The week that the snow came, perhaps. Or, you know, is it something about a year, you know, the pandemic year or the pandemic 2 years? Again, think about what your aim is, and can you get a piece about a long period of time? Can you get that into a short article? And of course you can. And likewise, you know, can you get a long read from a piece that only focuses on a very brief period of time? So again, think about length and time frame. You know, how long does it take to read? How long does the piece cover? You also need to think about the structure. So what happens where and when? So this is absolutely the standard structure that you will be very familiar with, particularly with essays. But you know, that introduction might give an overview, but it's about grabbing the reader. You know, that headline and opening sentence, that lead. How does that grab the reader? How does that tell the reader or flag up to them what they're going to get in this piece? Is it really working? And as I said in the previous lecture, do check your statistics on Medium to find out if your views matches up with the number of reads. And if you're getting a very high number of views and a low number of reads, that suggests that there's something not working as well as it might with your lead. Your headline, your title is working well. That's what's attracting people to go and have a look at the piece. But the lead, the opening sentence, the opening paragraph isn't working to keep the readers with you. So then the usual stuff, the first paragraph is your first main point and all of the stuff that should be in there, second and third, you know, the usual stuff. You know how to write. And then your conclusion is tying everything together and giving your reader something to take away, something that makes the whole of the article fall into place, but also gives them something that they can, that's maybe a call to action, something that they can think about, reflect upon, or maybe it is just a simple call to action of going and watching something, or going and purchasing something, or visiting somewhere, or, you know, joining a campaign, or whatever it is. But think about how that conclusion works. Does it absolutely meet your aim? And, you know, what is it you want your reader to do? So what about this notion that was in the previous lecture, that notion of diegesis and mimesis? Well, they mean show or tell. So diegesis, a bit like the word dialogue, is about telling. Mimesis or mimesis, depending on how you want to pronounce it, has got the word mime at the beginning. That's showing. And that's the easy way that I remember which is which. And there is a very big difference in writing whether you show or you tell. And if you're telling readers what to think, at times that can work really effectively, and at other times you need to give them space. You need to show them and let them make up their mind. So present them with the facts and then leave it up to them. So this works particularly when you're writing fiction, you know, that you really want to aim at not having too much sort of telling. You don't want to be constantly sort of saying, oh, the man was sad, the woman was happy, and here's why. You know, what you want for good fiction writing is to actually show. So actually show us how this person is sad or happy. You know, show us what's going on here. And of course, with this notion of showing and telling for writing non-fiction, this is where your images come in, the pictures that you use, but also the layout on the page, and not just the layout on the page, the font that you use, the typeface, all of those different elements will begin to tell the story or show the story to your reader. So, you know, don't overlook all of those, which leads us nicely into this notion of semiotics. So those of you that have already taken language in the media will already know what I'm talking about. So semiotics is essentially the study of signs. And essentially it's about what you expect your reader to already know. Will they understand? So will they understand emojis, for example? And, you know, the answer to that is going to be very probably yes. But for example, if you show them, okay, so an emoji that is now quite popular or has been quite popular for some time is the aubergine emoji. If you're not aware of what that stands for, be careful when you're doing a Google search and make sure you've got safe search on, because the aubergine emoji essentially stands for an erect penis. So people will use that emoji in social media, and it's, you know, sort of an inside joke, but, you know, pretty much everybody who is sort of regularly online will know what it stands for. So excuse me, it's a sign, a symbol that people recognise. They know what this stands for. And this is the same with using hashtags as well, and sort of memes, phrases. And, you know, don't forget that particularly with things like emojis and memes, we might think that these are just new elements that have come about with the arrival of this digital revolution, which we will be looking at in a couple of weeks' time. But actually, they have been around for a long, long time. You know, people have used, whether it's metaphors, similes, you know, cliches, people have used these as a shorthand version. You know, slang words, people know what they mean. So all of these very rich elements that we use in language, and not just in language, also in images too. And again, typeface and layout. What are we telling our readers? What are we showing them? If we use a pink, sort of curly, quirky, maybe sort of handwritten style of typeface, what does, or font rather, what does that tell us? You know, what does that flag up? And, you know, one really easy way to sort of illustrate this is what do you think when you come across text written in, oh, I've forgotten the name of it now. But you know, the simple, oh, Comic Sans, that's what it's called. Yeah, what do you think when you come across a piece that's written in Comic Sans? Now obviously on Medium this doesn't apply because it's all the same font. You can change the typeface to give you bold or italic or underlined. But you know, if you go to a website and you see that it's all done in Comic Sans, it tends to remind us of schools, but particularly primary schools, because that's a really easy typeface to read for children. And if we read something that is all written in Comic Sans, we are not, you know, if you see a notice up somewhere and it's all written in Comic Sans, you're not likely to take as much notice or give it as much sort of respect or attention as you might if it was written in something else that would have sort of more authority. So, you know, that's the thing. Even the very font that's used and the typeface, whether it's italic, bold, underlined, you know, and the size, each of those, if things are in capital letters, you know, that implies that somebody is shouting or that they're really not very familiar with actually using texting or, you know, online spaces. So again, think about what all of these elements in your writing, what they are telling your reader. What is it you're showing them? What are you showing them with your images? What are you showing them with your layout? And absolutely, what is your aim? So if you have a very clear idea of what it is you're writing and why you're writing it, that will then allow you to make decisions that will keep all of those other elements, the images, the typeface, the layout and so on, that will keep them all in line with your aim and get them to all work together. And of course, what type of language are you using? So this is something that we looked at last week with this notion of style. And of course, tied in with that is register. You know, are you using an academic register or are you using an informal, everyday spoken register that you would use with maybe friends? And is that applicable for this particular article? What tone is it? Is it jokey? Is it serious? You know, you can have an informal register and still write something with a serious tone. And tone and register go in part to put together this whole notion of style. But, you know, also involved in that idea of style, as we saw last week, is typeface, setting, layout, all of those other elements. And, you know, specifically what type of language are you using? What words are you using? You know, are you using words that have multiple different meanings, and are you really anchoring them with perhaps the images that you've got? You know, do think about these. And again, those of you that took language in the media last year will recognise that I'm actually drawing on terms from semiotics and this idea of anchor, or anchorage of text and image, and relay. And whether more is being told and you have to put the picture and the image together. So there is all of this extra stuff about semiotics going on, and you may want to use some of that. And if you do, you may want to look at Daniel Chandler's book, The Basics of Semiotics. But there is an awful lot of stuff out there, and certainly that idea of anchor and relay with images is Roland Barthes, and that's spelt Barthes, Barthes. He was French, so it's pronounced Barthes. But absolutely keep on thinking about who your audience. Will they get this? Are you using the language that your audience speaks? So don't be afraid to actually use specific, maybe technical language, or maybe specific elements of dialect that is just fitting for that audience, because that will make your audience feel involved. If it's, as I say, a particular dialect. So, if you've had a look at YouTube videos aimed at gamers, for example, they will use specific terms that only really gamers will understand, and people who aren't gamers, if they go and watch those, they won't get a lot of the references. So absolutely don't be afraid of using the language of that group, that audience, particularly if you are part of that audience. Then how people who, if you're a gamer and you're writing a piece about gaming, then don't be afraid to talk about, or talk in that language. And absolutely keep on coming back to what is your aim? What do you want people to get from this? And everything will follow on from that. So to sum up, so this is quite a brief video, but if you've watched the first one, the two together will give you the full overview of narratology and long form. So the first half, the first video, was very much about putting together the article, that long form piece. And you really do need to know what you want your reader to take away. You need to be clear about what it is you're writing and why you're doing it. What do you want them to get from your piece? Once you identify what it is you want them to get, and you know who your reader is, then you can decide how you're going to approach that article. But be very clear, what is your aim? And your aim doesn't need to be complicated. Your aim could simply be, I want people to go and watch this film because I thought it was really great. And my aim, therefore, in writing this review on this film is to get people who like science fiction movies to watch this unusual science fiction film. And that's my aim. So I know who my audience is, and that will also help you for pitching pieces to online websites, as well as print outlets. It will help you to identify, well, this is a review of a film, and I think that people who, read this particular website or read this particular newspaper or magazine would be really interested in it. And it fits with what that particular outlet normally has. So, once you've got that clear aim, then everything else should fall into place. Okay, so that's us finished on this second lecture, and of course we will be looking at some of these elements and putting together some pieces again in our seminars this week.